This is the story of Yamuna, an ordinary woman who chose a path to secure her son's future, a path that eventually took away her own breath. In the eyes of the world, it was a filthy act, for some a crime, for others a shameless display of Western culture, but for a few, it was a source of knowledge, the most direct way to understand the complex structure of the human body. Near Aurangabad in Maharashtra, in a small village, Yamuna's world was confined. She lived there with her husband, Pahalwan, and her son. True to his name, Pahalwan was a wrestler only in name. In reality, he was a first-rate lazy alcoholic and womanizer, roaming around aimlessly all day and squandering his wife's hard-earned money on a village prostitute was his habit. That wasn't all. His cruelty at home was no less. For Yamuna, being beaten had become an everyday affair. Violence and humiliation had become a part of her life. But that day crossed all limits. Pahalwan sold her last pieces of jewelry and even took an advance on Yamuna's wages from the owner of the biddy factory. At that moment, Yamuna's patience shattered. Her husband's betrayal tore her heart apart. Broken and devastated, she decided to end her life and jumped into the village's deep pond. But the water refused to drown her. Yamuna was an excellent swimmer, who often came to that very pond to wash clothes. As she floated, her eyes instinctively drifted toward the house of the prostitute her husband frequented. A question rose in her mind. Who was she? What was it about her that made Pahalwan so obsessed? Perhaps a swimmer does not find death in water, but a new shore of life. Yamuna swam back out, and in that very moment she decided she would not die now. She would live for her son. She decided to leave the village and go to Mumbai with her son to stay with her mother, Chandrakala. Chandrakala worked as a cleaner in an art college. Yamuna was confident she would find some work there too and get her son admitted to a government school. After reaching Mumbai, her mother taught her the biggest lesson of life. Chandrakala explained, "Here you don't live with your head bowed. You live looking people straight in the eye. These men, away from their homes, roam like animals. Their vulture-like eyes are always fixed on a woman's chest. Put a big bindi on your forehead, so their gaze stops there." Yamuna didn't want to be a burden on her mother. Chandrakala treated her like a daughter and had no children of her own. But a single fire now burned in Yamuna's chest, to find work as soon as possible, so her son could study in a good school and not be forced to live a life like hers. Days turned into weeks, but Mumbai offered Yamuna no work. Walking the city streets in search of a job, her slippers wore out and tore, yet no ray of hope appeared. Meanwhile, her son Lalia, sitting idle, began to go astray. With no school to attend, he started roaming the lanes with the neighborhood's vagabond boys. Amid all this, Yamuna began to find her mother Chandrakala's behavior a little strange. There was an unusual coincidence in her gestures, something rarely seen in a mere cleaning worker. Suspicion began to deepen in Yamuna's mind. One day she decided to follow her mother. She trailed Chandrakala quietly until she entered a large art college. The atmosphere there felt even stranger. Many students greeted Chandrakala with good morning or namaste, asking about her well-being, as if she were a professor. But Yamuna had seen her with a broom in her hand. After a while, when Chandrakala entered a room, Yamuna tiptoed in after her. Peeking through a crack in the classroom door, the scene before her eyes swept the ground from under her feet. In the center of the room, on a high stool, Chandrakala sat completely naked, while several students sat in front of her, intently sketching her body onto their canvases. Yamuna's head spun. She couldn't understand what was happening. Just then, Chandrakala sensed someone at the door. "Who's there?" her voice echoed in the room. Terrified, Yamuna ran away without a second thought. It felt as if someone had smeared her face with black soot. That evening, when Chandrakala returned home, Yamuna's anger burst out. "Have you sold all shame and modesty? Such a disgusting job." Chandrakala looked calmly into her eyes, and then years of pain surfaced in her voice. She told her how, after her husband lost his job, the house had fallen into starvation. Wherever she went looking for work, men's filthy eyes tore at her body. Things got so bad that they had to pick food from garbage to survive. It was then that a woman from the settlement, taking pity on her, helped her get this work. Chandrakala explained, "They don't see the nakedness of my body. They study the structure of the human form. For them, I am not a woman. I am a part of their education. I am doing the work of education. How can there be anything wrong in that? And yes, it is because of this work that we have a roof over our heads today." She also said that the job of sweeping and mopping houses was only for show, so that her husband would never grow suspicious. When Yamuna curiously asked more about the work, Chandrakala took a deep breath and said that they needed one more model. "Girls feel ashamed of doing this kind of work. If you want, I can talk to them. I've been doing this for 20 years, and till today, no one has ever found out." Placing her hand on Yamuna's shoulder, Chandrakala said, "People are willing to risk their lives for their children. You should understand that for your Lalia's future, you will have to risk your shame." Chandrakala had brought Yamuna to a crossroads. On one side was a well, on the other a deep ravine. For many days, a storm of confusion raged inside her mind. Finally, trembling with fear and hesitation, she decided to step into this river of fire for her son's sake. The first day was no less than an examination. Standing before dozens of piercing gazes and removing her clothes, Yamuna felt as if even her soul had been stripped bare. Her condition worsened with shame, but when she saw that there were other women there too, she gained a little courage. Chandrakala encouraged her, and even applied a black dot near her forehead to ward off the evil eye. Somehow the first day passed. Gradually, Yamuna realized that this work involved no physical labor. She only had to remain still in one posture for hours. Without doing any hard work, she was earning far more money than she ever had by rolling biddies. Soon, the first layer of shame had peeled away, and her mind began to settle into this work. She became more confident than before. Now Yamuna no longer lacked money. She admitted her son Lalia into a good school. Both women saw Lalia sitting quietly, drawing. The moment they saw his sketches, the color drained from their faces. An unknown fear took root in their hearts. The very art for which they were exposing their bodies was taking shape in their son's hands. They feared that when Lalia grew up, he might insist on studying in the same art college. If that happened, their secret would be exposed.
2 years passed in the blink of an eye.
During these years, Yamuna's body appeared on canvases and took shape in clay sculptures. She had become a professional model. But whenever the college was on vacation, she would become unemployed again. During those days, she worked as a domestic help in other people's homes. She never thought of returning to her village. She had no one left there. One day, Yamuna found some drawings in Lalia's school bag. The pictures were extraordinary. She realized that her son might one day become a great artist. The very thought made her soul tremble. She feared that if Lalia stayed here, he would certainly end up going to that same art college. That day, Yamuna beat her son badly. He screamed, but in reality, she was screaming at her own fear and helplessness. Chandrakala was shaken as well. Together, they made a harsh decision to send Lalia back to Aurangabad. Hearing this, Lalia exploded in anger. He created a scene throughout the settlement. He cried and screamed, but no one listened to him. Finally, after beating him, they forced him onto a bus to Aurangabad. The wound of sending her son away had not yet healed when the burden of his educational expenses broke Yamuna's back. She now needed even more money. She took another dangerous step. She agreed to pose privately for college students outside the campus, in their personal spaces. She knew how risky this could be, but for her son's future, she took that risk too. With time, the last layer of shame fell away from Yamuna's body. Now it was merely a job for her, a profession tied to her son's future. She had grown so comfortable with it that a strange confidence appeared in her walk and demeanor. After this, Yamuna took on many private assignments. As Lalia's educational expenses increased, so did Yamuna's work. She began modeling at several different locations across Mumbai. But one day, disaster struck the college. A savage mob of self-proclaimed guardians of culture stormed the campus. They vandalized priceless paintings and beat up students and the principal. Terror spread everywhere. After this incident, the other models, out of fear, refused to come to work. Everyone thought the college would now be shut down, but Yamuna did not lose courage. The very next day, she came and sat alone in that classroom. Seeing her bravery, the morale of the other students and professors also rose. It was a kind of rebellion, to save art, to protect the dignity of one's work. This was the only college in all of India where nude modeling was used to teach human anatomy. It was just as necessary as it is for a doctor to cut open the body to understand the organs inside. If an artist does not understand the structure of the human body, how can they ever become a great artist? But the very future that Yamuna was trying to save came knocking on her door one day and destroyed everything. Lalia returned from Aurangabad. There was no spark of education in his eyes, only a strange hatred. Angrily, he said, "I know everything about what kind of work you do. My friend Salim saw you getting out of big, expensive cars. What kind of sweeper is picked up by luxury cars, mother?" He began hurling abuses at his own mother. He saw her as a fallen woman, a prostitute. In a single moment, Yamuna's world shattered. The son for whose future she had gambled her dignity and her body, today, in his eyes, she was a whore. She began to see the shadow of her alcoholic, deceitful husband, Palwan, in Lalia. Now there was no meaning left in doing this work. What was the use of bearing her body in front of anyone anymore? For whom would she earn now? Her son had already misunderstood her. Even knowing how wrongly he saw her, Yamuna just kept looking at him silently. She could not tell him the truth. She knew her son did not have the strength to hear or understand it. The eyes in which she had once seen dreams of the future, those very eyes had turned her into a prostitute. There was no point left in saying or explaining anything. One evening, while walking along the seashore, she got lost somewhere in the waves. People said she must have drowned, but those who knew Yamuna said that the sea can never drown a swimmer. Perhaps she had gone very far away, burying her identity in those very waves. 5 years passed in no time. Lalia, Yamuna's son, was working as a peon in some office in Mumbai. His world had shrunk to serving tea, carrying files, and listening to his boss's scoldings. One day while returning home, his eyes fell on a poster. The lust inside him awakened, and in search of cheap excitement, he went straight to that exhibition. Inside the gallery, with a filthy smile on his face, he was judging the naked pictures one by one with his dirty gaze. Suddenly, his eyes stopped on a large painting. It showed a woman lying down. There was no pain in her eyes, only a strange calm, as if she had absorbed all the sorrows of the world within herself. He was staring at the woman's body when his gaze moved to her face. That face was his mother's. In an instant, the ground slipped from beneath Lalia's feet. His face turned pale, and that smile transformed into disgust and rage. He erupted, shouting at the exhibition in charge. That in charge was none other than the same old student who used to take Yamuna for private posing, and who had now become a professor at the college. The professor looked at Lalia with calm, steady eyes. There was no anger in them, only pity. Lalia could never become an artist. His thinking was like the wall of a well that had imprisoned him inside for his entire life. He was that frog in the well who believes the sky is only as big as what is visible from the mouth of the well. Openness and understanding were far beyond his small world. And in the depths of that very well, with his hatred and ignorance, Lalia remained trapped forever. The picture hanging on the wall still tells Yamuna's story, a mother's sacrifice, a woman's struggle, and the depth of art, which requires not just eyes, but a pure heart to understand. It is a story that her own son could never comprehend. Yamuna's story confronts us with the bitter truth of a society where a mother is forced to gamble even her dignity for her child's future. In your opinion, who is the real culprit of this story? Yamuna's husband Pelwan, her son Lalia, or the society that forced Yamuna to take such a step? Yamuna did everything she did for her son Lalia, but in the end, that very son misunderstood her. You got a chance to say something to Lalia. What would you say to him? Was the path Yamuna chose to shape her son's future the right one? Do share your answers in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel